What is up, everybody? Mr. Purse here. Welcome to Unit 5.4. We're doing Communist Revolution in Russia and the rise of totalitarianism. That's a lot of big words there. I don't know how many of them you know, but we got Communist Revolution and totalitarianism. Hopefully you know the words rise, Russia, of, and in. Just saying. We're going to backtrack a little bit back pre-World War One here and take us through World War One and the 20 years after. So I'm going to rock roll. A lot going on here in this video, a lot happening. At the turn of the century, 1900. So remember, World War One starts in 1914. Backtrack it up in those 10, 15, 20 years before. Russia has a ton of problems. Russia's in bad shape. They've tried to industrialize like the rest of Europe has, like the British and the French and the Germans, and they just aren't really successful at it. It's a big country. There's a lot of, it actually spans over 12 time zones. So it's huge, absolutely huge, 4 times the length of the United States. And they're just not industrialized. They really try to. They have what's called state-sponsored industrialization, meaning the government tries to pump money into these factories to build them, and it's just not working out at the rate of which they need to be successful in a war. They also still have an absolute monarchy. Mentioned this in the last video, but while the rest of Europe has gone through some type of political revolution with Enlightenment ideas, remember Enlightenment about democracy, light bulb going off, they're still an absolute monarchy. And so they're like behind the times. They're like 200 years behind where they should be. Also, they have heavy losses in World War One. World War One is a disaster for them. 2 million soldiers are going to die, 1 million more wounded. And we're talking people coming back, losing multiple family members. And the feeling on at home in Russia is, this isn't working anymore. And sometimes war can bring countries together. And then if wars last too long, they can pull governments apart. And in this case, we have the Russian government is going to be susceptible. Susceptible? It's a good word for today. Susceptible, meaning like it could happen that they could be overthrown. And this is the family. They're called the Romanov family. This is Nicholas II. We'll talk more about him in class. But this family has been in charge of Russia for 300 years. And it happens in a 5-year period where they go from being popular to all of a sudden wanting to be overthrown. And the revolution is going to happen during World War One. And the motto of this revolution is led by this guy right here, Vladimir Lenin. Oh, easy now. Vladimir Lenin is a Bolshevik. It's a fancy way of saying minority in Russia. Not important why it even means what it means and what it symbolizes, but it is a communist revolution in Russia. And communism, if you don't remember, is the workers are supposed to overthrow the owners of the factories and rise up and create a society where everyone's equal. So we get rid of money, we get rid of, everyone owns everything together. And that's the goal or the idea in this revolution, is that we're going to overthrow this absolute monarchy, this war that's happening, these people who are wealthy and people who are poor. We're going to try and even level the playing field. So we have a lot of workers who support it, soldiers who support it, some farmers who support it. And as a result of this, we're going to see a war break out between those who believe in communism and those who believe in democracy. And there's going to be a war, and 8 million. So we have 2 million people die in World War One, and then we have another 8 million who die in a civil war between the communists, who are known as the Reds, and the non-communists, who are known as the Whites. The Bolsheviks or the communists take control and they win. They say, we're done with the monarchy. We're finished with them. We're finished. We're going to eliminate all of the Romanov family. We are going to become a communist country. And this becomes the flag of the Soviet Union. It's the hammer right here. This part's the hammer for workers, and this part is a sickle. It is to help cut down wheat or to cut down farm products, and that is supposed to symbolize the workers, the factory workers, and the farmers coming together. Anyway, they're going to call themselves the USSR or the Soviet Union. This happens in 1918, 1922. They are going to be known as the Soviet Union all the way through 1991, which we'll get to a long time from now. It's the first time at this point in history that communism has been tried anywhere in the world. And again, the goal is to make everyone equal. I got a secret for you, and don't tell anybody, but it does not make everyone equal. Does not do exactly what it sets out to do, and it actually proves to be very horrific for a lot of the people living there. So this is our leader right here, Vladimir Lenin. He dies in 1924. So 2 years after they win the revolution or the Civil War, he dies. And there's 2 guys who could be in power next. One is this guy, Leon Trotsky. He looks like a nutty professor and like super dorky, but actually he is the head of the military or the army. He's no nonsense. He's Lenin's like right-hand man. It's his boy. And there's this other guy, Stalin, Joseph Stalin. He's the secretary of the Communist Party. Lenin doesn't really like him. He scares Lenin, but Lenin dies. He has a couple strokes and then he dies. And Stalin has worked his way into power and becomes the next leader. He exiles, Trotsky gets exiled to Mexico and eventually gets an ice pick through his eye in the middle of the night one night from Stalin's men. But another story for another time. So Stalin takes over. And I don't know if you've ever seen this guy before. Not popular, super famous, very well-known individual. He is often compared to Hitler and Mussolini and Mao Zedong in China. He is going to be what is referred to as a totalitarian, and he is going to have complete control over everyone. Very similar to an absolute monarch, but you don't pass your leadership on to a future son or daughter. So as a totalitarian, there's a few things that we're going to see. And we see this in Hitler's totalitarian Germany and Mussolini's totalitarian Italy. One is you're going to spy on people. So we have secret police in the Soviet Union. And when I say secret police, I mean you could be in a classroom of 18 people and 2 high school students could be spies for the police. You have people just walking down the street who you don't know who are listening into your conversations. You have friends who you might not realize are members of the secret police. And if you hear someone say something bad about Stalin, you report them. And then they are going to be arrested and deported or sent off to a labor camp or what are known as the gulags, and just a horrifically awful situation. He also bans religion. The idea in Stalin's mind is if you eliminate religion, there's no higher authority than the totalitarian leader. And in this way, we're eliminating anyone who's a threat to our power. So there's no church to answer to now. There's no God in the mind of Stalin. There's no God to answer to. It's just Stalin. Very interesting quote from Stalin. Death is the solution to all problems. No man, no problem. So that's number one. Totalitarianism. Number 2, he controls the economy. So there's no capitalism, laissez-faire, free market, buy and sell what you want, open whatever business you want. The government decides every single freaking thing. And his goal is to industrialize. Russia's not industrialized. You can't compete with the rest of the world if you're not industrialized. So he's going to attempt to industrialize. And there's 2 ways he does this. So we got a lot of 2s here. So control of the economy. It's known as a command economy, meaning he is in command or in control of it. One is he creates a 5-year plan. 5-year plan says we have 5 years to create so much electricity in this country. We have 5 years to produce so much coal. We have 5 years to produce so much oil. 5 years to produce so much steel. And they set these goals, and these quotas or these goals are super high, like way more than they can do. But it ends up working to a certain degree where they are going to increase the production of things to make you industrialize. What they don't produce are consumer goods. They're not producing shirts. They're not producing pants or boots, unless they're for the military. They're really trying to industrialize the country and build more railroads and build more weapons and build more stuff to help them stop any type of threat to their country. So it's really what's called heavy industry: coal, iron, electricity, so we can heat homes and have electricity in areas. And that's the ultimate goal of this. And it's relatively successful. A lot of people die along the way, but in terms of 5-year plan, it is successful. The second thing they're going to do is what are called collectives. They're going to tell farmers who they promised their own land to these farmers, by the way, during the revolution. And then the revolution ends and they're like, yeah, you know what? You're all going to work on this farm together. So instead of 20 plots of farms, 20 families are now working on this farm together. It's like the worst idea for a group project. Like you just don't trust anybody. So they're going to take this land away from the peasants. They're going to make them work on large farms together. They're going to give them machines like tractors and stuff to work on it, but it just doesn't work. The wealthy farmers don't like it. The poor farmers don't trust the wealthy farmers. They're all on these big farms together, and they don't necessarily like each other. They want their own plot of land, something that they own themselves, and it creates a lot of problems. And one of the biggest problems it creates, because these farmers aren't happy and they're not working as hard as they probably could, it's going to lead to the Soviet Union to turn to an area in the southern part of the area that they control called the Ukraine, which is its own country today. Hopefully everyone knows that. And Stalin forces the Ukrainian people to turn over their food to the Soviet Union and starts starving them to death. 6 million people are going to die in the Ukraine over the course of a couple of years. Really an awful, tragic human rights violation, we'll call it, where it's almost violating human rights. And you see this picture here, like this is a picture of a human rights violation. You can see the starvation. Maybe if you've seen pictures of the Holocaust, looks very similar. And this is Stalin's attempt at doing this to try and not only get food for the Soviet people, but also to punish the Ukrainian people who wanted their independence and wanted to be free of Russian rule. One last thing, and we'll talk more about that, the Ukrainian piece in class. One last thing. is women's roles. We're going to see an increased opportunity for women. This idea of communism is everyone's supposed to be equal. You can't forget about the ladies. So he is going to increase certain opportunities for women. One, he's going to legalize birth control, so women can determine, and there's family planning. You can determine when you're actually going to have a kid if you prefer not to. Women are legally going to be allowed in Russia for the first time to choose their own marriage partner. It's not an arranged marriage. It's not who your parents tell you to. And you also have the right to get a divorce, which is a huge deal, especially those who are victims of any type of spousal abuse. Up to this point, you couldn't get divorced, which is really messed up unless your husband agreed to it. Also, more higher education. Women are going to be encouraged and allowed to go to college. And almost every job opportunity is going to be available to women. We're going to see a lot of women who are going to be, and this is a picture right around World War II of women who are going to be involved in the war. So those are our three things: collective farms, totalitarianism, and women's roles. That's a lot. Wow. You got any questions? You write it down. You let me know. You know the deal. That's the last part of this unit. I'm out.